and I got YouTube open and everything. So I'm
Excellent.
watching to see that we begin broadcasting. All right, it says we're live.
All right. I'm just waiting for it to show up on YouTube. There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Oh
Excellent.
shit! Now I got the sound on it too. There we go.
Oh,
We're good.
no worries. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Another Thursday live stream, and it seems like it's been a minute. Finally, we get to talk about something that we have mentioned. I think on maybe every single other podcast episode, every stream we've talked about it. Every single time we've come online here. Vampire the Masquerade, how to run it, what to do, and
What makes
yeah,
it great?
yeah,
What are some of its drawbacks? All of that.
yeah, and got a guest here, Frank, the man himself, someone who you may remember from a few cameos from Andrew Wood's channel, but maybe not. We have a lot of newer folks, but Frank and I, we're in multiple games every week, and ran the first finally after years and years of my running it, reading about it, watching info about it on YouTube, Matt Dawkins videos, Andrew's videos, etc. Really enjoyed Frank's game. Really learned a lot about how.
Thank you.
Someone else, how you do a great job, and I thought, well, what better way to start talking about something that Matt and I really enjoy, and ask someone else. How do you juggle all those things, those aspects, the characters? How do you put them together? And I think that's maybe enough ado. Like
yeah, and I think
Frank. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think the good place to start, as always, is how did you get into Vampire the Masquerade and role playing more broadly?
Exactly what I was going to ask.
Oh wow,
Primeval Fantasy, welcome.
That's a hell of a start, man. That's
storied tale.
Yeah,
storied tale. Man, to be honest with you, it started in the goth scene. Believe it or not, I was really into that scene growing up, and it kind of spread from there. A lot of them were role players. I had some really close friends who were seriously into vampires, and I kind of fell in line with that. And from one thing to the next, next thing I know, I'm sitting at a game tabletop, and rolling dice with the same folks.
Yeah, and I know you've been deep in the LARP scene and in the online. What would you call it? The online, like a play-by-post community. You've ran some, played a bunch.
DigiChat was a big thing for a long time, and from New Bremen, Devils Macabre, Papercut Dreams, Immortal Vigilance. Those are just some sites to name a few where I spent a lot of time playing and being just immersed in the world of darkness there.
Yeah, and I think you had a character that lasted 16 years or more.
Yeah,
play by post, multiple LARPs.
That was a hell of a run.
Yeah,
but it was as all things do in the world of darkness there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think something I've been eager to pick your brain on, Frank, and Matt, feel free to interrupt me with any interjections or questions you have. But like I said, I've been interested in vampire for almost since I've gotten into role-playing games, which I've said elsewhere is fairly late, and I've ran several games, but it wasn't until I moved down here to Virginia and got to be part of your game set in Houston that I was able to play for more than a couple isolated one-shots, maybe a two-shot, very, very rarely. And I was really taken with how you wove all the aspects, the mechanics, the world. You draw more, I think, influence from like the lore than I do, like the deep lore beyond Camarilla, Anarch, Sabbat, the big tentpole items that make up the setting. And you have seems to me, a very firm understanding of how to keep all those plates spinning. So I'm, one of the major characters, the foundation of any vampire game. Matt, you and I think we've said this or alluded to it before. It's the city. The city is the character, and in many respects, the city is the main character.
Definitely.
And you made Houston come alive. I don't think you've lived in Houston before, but it feels very real. So, how do you go about building that city, making it have different neighborhoods that feel different? What would you say? Points of interest. How do you make that? How do you spin that up?
Well, I first start with what I want the city to be about. What's the story behind the city? Like you said, man, the city is a character of its own. So characters are going to come and go. They're going to be different pieces on that board throughout the entire story. Some will stay, but that city remains, and that city has to have a history of its own. It has to have a beginning. It has to have a perceived possible end. But everything in between is what, you as the players and the storyteller make happen. And in the case of Houston, it was a bastion of defense against Sabbat.
Yeah, we were talking right before we started on our preferred factions, and I prefer the Sabbat, but please continue.
But in this story, as we're nearing Gehenna, the final nights, the Camarilla has decided that these particular states, Houston, the city of Houston is a very important wall there, that bastion, before anything else from the southern influence can come any closer. So elders from all around have been called to essentially aid or help, or bring what you can. And of course, in return for that, they're given influence, they're given land or domain, they're given prominence. There's always a promise and there's always a lure, and that's that hook that gets the ball rolling, essentially. So then you figure out who those people are that are showing up. You want to have your antagonists. You got to have your antagonists.
Oh yeah,
the ones you love and the ones you absolutely hate.
A few come to mind that I love and love to hate.
I'm sure you could name a few right there, on both ends. But you got to have them. You need to have them. There's characters that need to be hated. Maybe even the prince is hated. Maybe he's not loved. He's not the charitable, charismatic sort.
Yeah, definitely.
Which way do you want to go with the story? What do you want to share with your audience? What do you want to make your players feel? Dark horror, advanced technology. The list goes on. And in Houston in particular, I wanted the characters and the players at that table to feel the weight of elder oppression. They're trying to get the job done, or so they're telling you that. And the constant threat of the Sabbat, not far off. So all of these players who have always wanted to have that power in their hands, now's your chance to get it. And now that you have it, you're going to be expected to do something with it. And if you don't, that hammer's coming down on you. So you've got it on both sides, So there's fear, there's the weight of obligation. And the setting itself is meant to be dark. So city streets are dark. The days are shorter, the nights are seemingly longer. Every shadow is deeper, darker. Everyone's got an angle. The smiles are questionable. Just because they're smiling and looking your way and offering something, what are you really getting?
Yeah.
So you never let them feel safe.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I adore about Vampire, and it's basically influenced every game that I've played and run since coming into the World of Darkness, is the idea that power, like there is the allure to power, but nothing is ever free. And it's usually it's kind of like more money, more problems. The more power you get, the more people are after it, and people who are trying to tear you down. So it's like the neonate characters, you get kind of different experiences playing neonates, Ancilla, and elders. Like it. And as neonates, it's like you've got nothing. You're the lowest man on the totem pole, and you might be in the most dangerous position possible if you don't even know who your sire was. You get embraced. You have no idea what's going on. But then once you get kind of into that middle-aged category, of the Ancilla, where you're a little more established and you have some power, it's like you still have the most to gain and so much to lose, because you've got so many people from the bottom coming up after you, but then you've also got the elders who are trying to put you in play all the time, and so it's like it's the worst position to be in.
It never stops.
Never stops. Yeah. And so those are always my favorite NPCs, my favorite once you play through the neonate phase and get there, like that's always my favorite stage, because it's like there's something always at stake. You can't escape it in this world. That's just the way it operates.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I like what you said, Frank, about putting over and letting the history of the city, the region, the broader world feed into what kind of a spotlight, what color light are you going to shine on the city. I think that's something I've not emphasized as much. I've maybe taken a more Requiem inspired. The city is sort of an island in and of itself, but really focusing on another aspect that you said, which is the feel, the tone. I'm big on feel, on tone, on emotion. I ran a game in Philadelphia, and I wanted, in contrast to what you wanted to bring about, what feel you wanted to evoke in Houston, I wanted to put over the desperation, the history, but not in a historical context. The death. There were ghosts, wraiths, perhaps involved in that game. The sort of manic frenzy of a city that, whether you're a mortal or a kindred, the screws are being put to you. That's very much a vibe I get when actually going to real life Philadelphia. A lot. It's a city of many different neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. Some are only like 2 blocks wide and a block, thick, but they all feel very, very different. I wanted to put that over. Oh yeah. And there was and still is a Malkavian prince. I wanted to put that over as well. The malaise of the craziness. I really like the idea of almost sort of like Arthurian understanding of how the monarch, the prince, the king is the mind, the soul, the well-being of the sovereign affects the health or lack thereof of the city. And though you guys didn't interact overly much with him, he is what he is, and also has a history. And I wanted to put that over. So very, very much agreed. And definitely going to put more emphasis on the history of the region. How does the Camarilla or the Sabbat or the Anarchs, all of the above, feed into, the starting point of a city, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All very good, very important details to have.
So what? Why did you choose Houston in particular?
Honestly, I hadn't seen it really done before. There's been cities up and down, New York by night, I don't think there's a vampire player out there that hasn't heard of
Hasn't
that.
played it, yeah.
Yeah.
Even Chicago, your man right here, a fan of Loudon and his series. So Houston just seemed a bit off kilter.
Mhm.
It seemed real for the world of darkness. It seemed real country first, and then real southern first. But then when you drop them into the city, it's just the same as or it's just another dark city, and they kind of forget about all of that. So it didn't really matter, honestly, where it was. It was just a name, and we went with it.
Right. Yeah, that's have you ever played a game set in the city that you live in?
Yeah.
How did that go?
But yeah, we did a game. Well, I guess we did do a World of Darkness game setting. We had a 7 Cities LARP, which was connected to the camera of the LARP there, worldwide, or at least continent wide. So yeah, we've done that. It was strange.
Yeah. I've always felt that it would be, I don't know, it's just never felt right to do it in the place that I live. So like I've played my first game, I was living in bumfuck nowhere in California, and we were doing New York by night. And then after that, it's like I've done like New Orleans, I've done doing cities that have just been made whole cloth, but the idea of doing it like where you live just seems weird for some reason. I don't know. That's
interesting. Because I'm from Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia, and I've always run Vampire when I can in Philadelphia. Now, it's been rare that I've had players who are from the Philadelphia area. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a different dynamic, but
well, maybe it's because living in Philadelphia was literally living in the world of darkness.
It was that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, you were already there.
A new adventure seed. Yeah.
I'll tell you,
another NPC.
One trick that worked was the ST put a spin on everything that you thought you knew. Essentially, you want to go to the library down the street, and everybody knows the old lady that runs it. But now, being that it's the world of darkness, and you show up, she seems the same up front. Mm-hmm. But behind the scenes, what is she doing? And you get a bit of a leak of the information that's going on behind the scenes, and she's a totally different being at night. And now, when you go back there during the day, real time, and you see this woman, you look at her a little different.
Yeah. You've fundamentally changed your perception of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
So
that immersion's got to be there, regardless of what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I am curious. I've never actually done any of the LARPs. I'm not sure what the question is here. I know it's like the experience has to be different, right? Than the actual tabletop game. Like the mechanics, I think someone explained it to me one time. It might have been they were playing like rock, paper, scissors or something.
That's what I was used to for the longest time. Yeah.
Yeah. But did you find it more immersive doing the LARPs, or do you have a preference for the LARP or the tabletop version?
Honestly, I was a big fan of the LARPs for one reason, and that was the immersion. When I went there, my first time going, everyone was in costume, and they were really pushing, the costumes. They were really pushing the being in character. And so you had a badge essentially that was you turn it one direction and you're online. You turn it off, you turn it the other direction, you're offline. But you were encouraged to keep that badge online, where everyone could see you. As long as everyone could see you, you was online. Because everyone's got a different plan, different agenda, coming and going, and the immersion is kept when everyone is on the same page. So when you have that and you walk into a room and the person that a friend of yours that looks to you and he's in character, she's in character, then it gives you a different feeling than sitting at the tabletop where you're kind of joking and carrying on and get the peanut gallery going if you're not careful.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it for that aspect, but when that began to slip and people didn't care as much, you're having scenes with the same characters, but they're not in costume. I mean, that's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to stay in, makeup for some people who went all the way. It's a lot of work. So sitting there for long hours, not getting paid for it, and
yeah, shoveling out money for the costumes and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was good. It was great.
Yeah.
But, that's always been the sense that it would be. It would be. It would probably be the most immersive experience if it was good, but it would be the easiest to slip and be absolute trash.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the big fear. Like we've looked at Convention of Thorns, right? That's the Yeah. And like that looks really cool and enticing, but
it does.
I could try and think of like, okay, but what is the average person going to be doing outside of Convention of Thorns, the kind of game I'm like, I don't know if I could get into that. But on the topic of immersion, because that's one of the big focuses of our channel. We love immersive role-playing games. I know you've known Andrew Wood for basically forever, and played in his games, run games for him. I've run games for him. I've actually never played in an Ander game before. But was that something that when you guys linked up, was that kind of the style of play that you both started with, or was that something that kind of developed later? Because some people, it's like they start playing D&D and it's, it's the peanut gallery. You're just cracking jokes. You're doing whatever. But it seems to me that there's a lot of people that just dive right in and they understand immediately. They're like, oh, no. This is about imagination and this is about getting in character and like experiencing this.
Yeah. He that is one thing he definitely has, is an imagination, and it's very important. I mean, it's probably the most important thing at a table. Forget the dice and set them aside, and if you can tell the story without them, then you're doing a really, really good job. And that all started for me with him, actually in a Ravenloft setting, outside of the World of Darkness. It wasn't it was Dungeons and Dragons, but he had a way of keeping everyone at the table in character, and everyone it was always dangerous. Everything, the nights again were deeper and darker. He could have a scene around a campfire where, everyone's low on hit points. You're low on hit points. You don't want to get into any more trouble. You don't want to get into any more fights. Yeah. You just want to survive the night. And your sleep is interrupted by wolves howling in the distance and creeping close to the camp. So when you can use just that alone without having to have some, big statted NPC coming at somebody to intimidate them, you've got it made. And he was always really, really good with that. And that encouraged me to kind of pay attention to some of the things that he was doing by just keeping the attention on some of the smallest, most minute details and stretching them out and making them last.
Right. That's I couldn't have said that better. That's exactly the style of stuff we have to do here.
Correct answer.
Yeah.
Yes, we're talking about immersion, and you mentioned the LARP. It was great when it was good, but once the cracks started showing, the House of Cards really quickly falls apart, and it made me think to ask, with regards to World of Darkness. Yeah.
Thank you, Crafty, and good to see you.
Good to see you, man. Maybe it's a perception thing, but I think it seems real in my experience. One of the big, I don't know, it's not a downside of the storyteller system, but I think a downside of the player base, that it has the fans, it's accrued. There's something about the dot system, and there's something about the disciplines system and the meta plot, the heavy, especially in the early days when material was being published for Vampire and Werewolf and all the different lines, a really obsessive attention to all of the minutia, and in particular all of the mechanical details. Yeah. Do you find it's more prevalent to have people, you're role playing a discipline or something that you have a merit, a flaw, and someone says, "Oh, I know what that's 3 dot auspex. I know that's that's a one dot flaw. He's putting over." And I found even in my game that was a stress on my patience. How have you dealt with that? Do you find that to be the case more so than like D&D or a different game, West End game, Star Wars or whatever the case
Right.
may be?
Yeah,
How do you
it can be
deal with that?
difficult. It can be quite difficult because well, first and foremost, what I've encountered was everybody's got a different playing style. So some people who don't have who have played games where the points absolutely mattered, they're stuck on those points. So they don't believe that they can accomplish the same goal without having to flex those points. So I put them in situations where they can succeed without them, or they don't recognize them, right off the bat. You may not recognize their use of potence or dominate command. If the player is slick with their vernacular and how they slide the word in, you never knew it happened. And I won't give them a chance to spot it because there's no reason why they should have, especially if they don't have the discipline themselves. So
yeah, that's something I've done as well, is kind of creating, when you're describing what's happening and describing the use of disciplines, is you can totally describe them in ways that don't sound like it's from the book, and it sounds weird and scary. They'll be like, what was that? And like eventually they might figure it out. Or like years later you can tell them what's going on. But I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword with the people that got really into Vampire. A lot of them did the system mastery thing. They knew everything about it. I was one of those people. Like I knew every bit of lore. Most of it's gone out of my brain now, but I knew every bit of lore. I knew every discipline, every role, like everything. And that's great when your players know that most of the time. Because then the game is smooth. There's no looking things up except very occasionally. But then at the same time, it's like you get it. Some of the mystery can be kind of sucked out of the game. Which can be frustrating. Sorry, we're getting some comments from the chat here. Justin says, restarted the stream. Nick asks, how do you start a game of Vampire? Well, first you need to get at least half a dozen big titty goth chicks. That I don't think it really matters where you go from there. That's true.
Also correct.
And you've got at least a dozen titties there. So
that's true.
That's the most important thing. It's funny, like there's I don't remember.
And chicks love Vampire. They may not love
I don't remember
D&D.
if we were on a stream or not, but someone, we were talking about, like someone brought up the question of like, how do you get more women to play role-playing games? And Nick was like, that game's already been invented. It's called Vampire the Masquerade.
Yep. Big agree.
Onion Kid, how to run Vampire the Masquerade. Step 1, play Vampire the Requiem. The meta, attention paid to mechanics, always detracts from otherworld immersion.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I want people to know the mechanics reflexively. I don't want them sitting there thinking about how they can game the mechanics to win. That's not it. It's like, how do you use the mechanics in service of just being, playing the character in the world? That's what it's
always a corrosive influence, but I think because of the feel that Vampire wants you to evoke, it's also even more susceptible to that sort of corrosion. D&D is kind of, a huge part of its actual identity is kind of that meta play style, which is not good, but there's something that's more, I guess, pure, at least in the ideal, about Vampire, where if you mess with it if you're touching the mirror, you're leaving, these fingerprints all over it, and it fucks it up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the atmosphere and the storytelling matter. That's the point of Vampire. The point
Correct.
of Vampire is basically to have this dark, immersive, horrific experience. It's not to go, kill the enemies and take their gold.
Right.
It may be you may end up killing the enemies to take their territory or their power or whatever it is, but there's built in, everything is much more character motivated.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I just adore about the game, because you don't see that in D&D, and D&D is honestly, it's not built for that, which is, I guess it's fine. Like, it's not trying to do that. But that's it's an inferior game.
Inferior experience.
Yeah, it's an inferior experience.
Yeah. But I think that's a good segue to another, prime foundation stone, certainly of a vampire game. It's the case for any game, but in some ways, I think it's even more important in Vampire, and that's creating evocative, memorable, believable NPCs.
Yeah.
Characters, whether it's the prince, whether it's a caitiff living in an alleyway somewhere, or whether it's your mortal neighbor who lives across the road from you, or anything in between, a werewolf, whatever the case may be. So, it's sort of a question for, I guess, all of us, but, Frank, how do you, I don't know, do you start with people you've met or seen in real life? Do you have obviously that's the case for all of us to a certain extent. Is there also a particular thing you want to have evoked through them? What are your thoughts on that? Because you have very memorable NPCs.
Man, I build from that heart of the city. I get the feel of the city and what's going on in the city and why it's there, and then I put people in it who care about it, and people who don't care about it, and people who absolutely hate it. And how to put it, man? It's one of the best experiences that I had with an NPC was Zabruhan NPC, and he ended up the Primogen towards the end of the chronicle that we ran. It started the second chronicle as the Primogen again, but he absolutely hated one of the player characters. Couldn't stand the guy. Wanted to smash his face in every chance he got. But the player character had, not only did he have clout, but he had everybody in the city just about had something positive to say about this guy. So this NPC can't just walk up and smash him, because if he does, now he's looking like the asshole. Mm-hmm. It runs the risk of it. If you care about that, that should be decided for that. You should have that decided for that NPC. Why does he care? What are his goals? What are his interests? Why does he hate one player versus liking the next one? Or why does he hate the one that he hates? Why does he like the one that he likes? I really go to the length of having those details, both on paper and in mind, so some of them are flexible, given the role play that they might encounter, and have a general idea of how they will respond to those PCs, or how they respond in general themselves. Colorful, make them colorful, make them give them a lot of depth. Answering the question of, again, why are they caring for the city? Why are they there? Makes a huge impact on what they will and will not do influence wise. As you're speaking about influence, just because this other NPC holds the docks, well, the docks are bringing in money, industry. It's a huge impact for the city. It works for everyone. If I go snuff this guy out who knows this better than I do, then I'm kicking my own self in the ass, Yeah. So those have to be real real considerations for these NPCs who want to gain power. So you don't go snuff this guy out. Now you work with him, and now you find a way to manipulate him, or you find the thing that he loves and hold that over him. Then you start getting into all the different means and methods and avenues for approach to the same goal.
Yeah, it's also that's super important for players as well. And I think players coming from different styles of games, if you're coming from like a goofier fantasy style game where you're doing like the murder hobo thing, it doesn't really work in this game, because it's like you said, you go and you knock out the guy at the docks and you're like, oh, this is mine now. Now you got to deal with the unions. Now you got to deal with the mob, aliens mob, same thing. But it's you've got a set of much more realistic problems, and again, it's like I said, nothing is free, and there's always these consequences to it. And especially when something is kind of like up for grabs, essentially, like an elder disappears or something like that, that to me, it's like you're not just dealing with people who are going to be semi-rational actors. You're dealing with bloodthirsty monsters who occasionally they lose their fucking minds, and so it's like chumming the water for sharks. And so this is just something one of the reasons I love this game is that, like, something will happen in a vampire game no matter what. Like, you can't avoid drama and crazy shit happening through even very little action on the player. You can have very passive players and they're still going to get involved in these like really kind of crazy violent conflicts that have ripples like everywhere. And especially being in a modern world, and since it is so city focused and city based, you're generally you can't just go into the wilderness or like go to the next town or whatever, because it's like, how are you going to get to the next town? That's really fucking dangerous. It's like,
and if you get to
cities,
the next town, like, you're gonna have to answer, what are you doing?
Who are you?
In my domain?
Yeah, exactly.
You did not announce yourself. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, all of that. That's what makes it. That's what gives it weight. That's what makes you have to think about your actions and considering them. Another thing that's a significant part of the World of Darkness has always been the blood bond.
Yeah. Yes.
I've seen
something also that gets overlooked a lot.
Right.
Oh yeah. I've seen players abuse it. I've seen players, shorthand it. I've seen players go way beyond necessary. But in many of those instances, they should have in mind how that character would react to the blood bond, how they feel. Who is that person that is now smitten or absolutely loyal? There's been characters who have, killed out of being in love with another person, another NPC. Or on the same coin, why not have that person absolutely devoted to that character, or that NPC, or whoever it is, and want the best for them. So they put themselves aside, they sacrifice themselves for them. How often do you see that played instead of just the I'm in love and no one else can have you, kind of thing.
Yeah, there's on that topic as well, ghouls are really interesting characters as well.
It should be very real too.
Yeah, and it should be really kind of fucked up. Like, it's the type of thing of like, I need to keep Master safe can have really like scary consequences for Master sometimes.
And Frank, you played a ghoul. You played Anders Ghoul in my Philadelphia game, and he was a most interesting individual. A lot of
Thank you, K999. I've only been here for 5 minutes, and it's already a great conversation. We only have great conversations. Yeah, many such cases. Glad to have you here, though.
But yeah, ghouls. Something I put forward as a tradition or not a tradition, a law of the city, particular to the current prince, because I wanted to make ghouls be special. I wanted to shed some light. They're not just cannon fodder. They're not
Right.
nameless
Yeah.
NPCs. They're not, they're not Shredder's foot soldiers, right? Who
Yeah.
go out en masse to,
Right.
to handle business or to show up as like mooks in a scene.
Yeah.
So the prince decreed in Philadelphia that ghouling is a privilege, not a right, and each, just like embracing a child, you need permission to ghoul, and you can only have anyone can only have no more than 3 ghouls at any one time. Because you think about that also, how much effort is it for a Dominator to check in with and keep tabs on their ghouls? And I'm not even talking about
And to keep them
the blood
fed.
every month.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that, but not only that. To both of your point, to your point, Matt. I have to keep Master safe. I'm supernaturally in love with my Dominator, and I want to please them. Just because I want to please them, I may not be doing my Master's bidding in the ways in which he or she would want me to do. So I, the vampire, have to keep tabs that all the things that I want done are being done in the way and at the pace that I want them done.
And
ghouls are incredibly important NPC characters.
Yeah, and you also, this is the other thing, is that it's not just some, I got this free slave now, that just gets to do my bidding during the day and take care of everything. It's like you have to, in some sense, keep that person maintaining some sense of normalcy in their own life, because this is the type of thing, it's like you're getting someone addicted to like magical heroin,
Right. Yeah.
And that's generally not going to have great consequences for someone.
Definitely.
If their life starts falling apart, or if they stop sleeping, or they can't function in a normal way, authorities start getting involved in their life. That's bringing things and other threats closer to you as well.
Yeah.
And for for those of you listening, if you are not or watching, if you are not familiar with Vampire the Masquerade, a ghoul is a human servant, kind of like Renfield was in Dracula. You feed your blood to a human. It gives them some small bits of supernatural ability, but they become basically enthralled to you, and you have to feed them once a month, I think. Is that what you said?
It's once a month.
Yeah, about once a month to keep that supernatural nature and bond with them. But it's something that it really can just destroy someone's life, And
it can twist. It can become distorted.
Yeah.
Well, you spoke on the master keeping them as just slaves, or cannon fodder for the bad guys. You should ask Ander to explain or describe Sid to you sometime, because he was one of the better ghouls that was played. It was an NPC ghoul to one of the players, and I asked him, how did he want this guy to be? And all he wanted was a brute. He wanted this knuckle dragger. So I gave him that. But over the course of several years of gameplay, this knuckle dragger just continued to be, watch the house, go open the gate for our guests, stand by me when I sleep. But when this player would find a hot chick in the game, he would ghoul her. Why don't you come with me? Well, boss, why is she going with you? And I'm staying there watching the house.
Yeah.
So what was love eventually became twisted and distorted. And there was reasons for that ghoul now to start looking for him out in the street. Well, I don't want to stay at the house. I want to come find you. I want to know what's going on too.
Yeah.
He's breaking.
Bring me in, coach. Yeah. I want to show you I can do it.
Yeah.
Sitting in the house for 5 years doing nothing,
And this is the other thing, is that love and hate, there can be sometimes a fine line between them, and they're walking that line. Ultimately, even if this person has been hurt and abused, they are compelled by this force, basically, to still love and want and desire your approval. And
Torturous.
so, but that can still be there, but they could ostensibly hate you in the process too. Yeah, it's they're so good. I have the Requiem Ghouls source book, which has one of the most fucked up opening pieces of fiction in a White Wolf book that I've come across.
Yeah,
nice.
But it's really, really good. But it's another one of these aspects of Vampire in the World of Darkness games where they kind of don't leave any stone unturned. And if you're taking the setting seriously, these, like, every one of these mechanical things and powers that you have has really interesting consequences in the world of the game, and it's all character focused. It's such
I have the V20 Ghouls and Revenants book, and it's quite good. And again, like, really don't sleep on your ghoul characters. The way I want to say, in my game, in my Philly game, which you were a part of, Frank, I think, and that was an Ancilla level game. You guys were already players on the chessboard, right? You're not just a bunch of nobodies who haven't proven themselves. You've been around the block, so you are people of consequence. People know you, and yet, I want to say it is the case. Most of the players or the characters knew or had greater screen time with various kindred's ghouls and not the vampires, or at least that would be the first meeting. Even though you're an Ancilla, I'm here, or I have other things to do. Even if I'm on your level, whether it's a disrespect thing or even if it's just to put over the fact that you are a vampire, you've been around at an Ancilla level, you've been around for over 100 years at this point. You're also trying to put out fires and establish your goals and your ambitions, and you're only awake for X number of hours a day. You can't be in a scene right away, right? It's putting over the verisimilitude of the world. You're just one person in a city that's always spinning night and day. And so even if you have a rapport as a vampire character with another NPC, it's more than likely the case that you are also very well, if not even more familiar with, to a certain degree, with one or more of that NPC's ghouls.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted to make those ghouls sort of feel alive, and I think, I hope there were at least a couple memorable ghoul characters.
Very much so.
For that. Yeah. So, they're don't just build your NPC roster with
vampires. Yeah.
With vampires, and don't think it's a segueing maybe into a different topic, but you're not done once you figure out, okay, here's the prince, here's the
sheriff, here's the primogen,
here are the primogen. Maybe there aren't any all the clans may not be equally represented. In the Philadelphia game, the Gangrel clan were severely weakened. They didn't have a primogen ship, and they had lost a ton of territory. Those wrinkles are sort of part of how you bring a city to life. You make it unique from, whatever the case may be.
And make your mortals real.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep your mortals real. Keep them keep them an honest threat to the Masquerade, because that above and beyond all else, unless you're playing a Sabat game.
Even then, you gotta. Wait, I'll let you finish, but I'll talk about that.
It's the biggest threat to the stability of the Camarilla.
Yeah. Why is there a Masquerade?
Why is there a Masquerade? Exactly. So if they're nothing but targets all night long,
right?
A lot of that goes out the window.
Yeah.
When you've got the sheriff who's doing sheriff things throughout the night, and he stands by and watches and sees a kindred that he knows it was 100% a kindred gets gunned down in the street, he's probably hoping that kindred doesn't stand back up and walk away.
Yeah.
Yep.
Stay down.
Yeah.
Play dead. We'll handle it from here.
Yep. I know you got 48 dots in fortitude. Don't get
Yeah.
up. You know,
yeah, exactly.
don't fuck this up, or you and
Yeah.
I are gonna have a problem.
Yeah, on your
Yeah.
point with the Sabbat, it is actually a good point. As to I love the Sabbat. I love a lot of the weird, because it gets into the weirder supernatural aspects of the game and the game lore. But on the flip side of that, the whole their whole shtick, if you take it as written, doesn't really make any sense. Of like, they're totally against the Masquerade. They want to just, they view humans as, you know, cattle and to be the slaves of the superior being or whatever. It's like, yeah, but the Masquerade exists for a very good reason. And if you continually break the Masquerade, they're gonna burn you alive. Like, they will find
There's
you.
over
You're
7
not
billion of them.
invincible. Yeah, you've got half of the fucking 24 hours in the day. You're basically a statue, you know. And if they find you, you're toast. You don't really get to wake up. So that part of it is, I think, a part of the setting that it kind of doesn't make sense, because it undermines the entire secret nature of the supernatural world. So I do get that, but you know, my first vampire game was a Sabbat game, and so I think there's the overwhelming nostalgia overcoming that.
The Sabbat are cool. A lot of the aspects which makes vampire, the lore of vampire, the world of vampire, at least to my mind, most interesting, was introduced with the Sabbat, namely the paths of enlightenment.
Yes. Yeah. And before we go on to paths of enlightenment, we do have a question. Primeval Fantasy RPG says he's never played VTM. How does GMing differ from conventional RPGs with impartial cause and effect adjudication?
With regards to,
i.e., the impression I get is that VTM's priority is drama and GMs steer it that way. I kind of, yes and no. I think that the White Wolf games, they, you know, it's in the terminology they use. You know, it's not a game master, it's a storyteller. You know, the focus was very much more on getting the kind of character-driven narrative experience out of it. And there is some stuff in the books that is kind of like rule zero, you know, do what's best for the game, heightens the drama, whatever. But I don't think any of that's actually really necessary with the game, just because the incentives that the game has and that the setting has just produces conflict no matter what. Like, you get that drama, and you get the story emerging from that just by virtue of playing the game. And I don't see it as any more being like railroady than any other role-playing game.
It's usually the players or the characters that are involved too. You know, their goals, their interests. You know, maybe they align. If they align, there's probably no drama. But if they don't align, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to make it happen? One guy like Fisticuffs, he's probably going to try to fight you over what the issue is. You know, and that becomes drama, because now he can't touch you because he's got to follow the rules. So he finds other ways to get at you, which inherently creates the drama of the pursuit, or in the pursuit of.
I think, you know, I would agree with both of those, both of your input there. I think, I mean, I don't know. I think in the writing, there actually is a more, that the writers try to put over a higher emphasis on drama, but I don't think that, even without that author's hand or that author's voice, the real difference is the fact that the core activity of what you're doing is different. You're not an adventuring party going to places to kill things or clear out dangerous locations to get more stuff that makes you more powerful. So what you're doing, you know, Vampire, certainly a Camarilla game, you know, most sort of broad, simple definition, it's supernatural. It's a supernatural mafia game.
Yeah.
You're playing The Sopranos or The Godfather as a vampire at night. And so you think to and who is your character? Generally speaking, you're, to keep with the metaphor, you're like a newly, or you're not even like a made guy yet. You're a newly introduced member of a crime family or a crime syndicate, and you are trying to please your boss, kick up, sort of go along to get along, while also by force of fist or by force of influence and politicking, increase your piece of the pie. And so because it's a modern world and you're sort of locked into a city, generally speaking, what happens naturally? Okay, I'm playing Christopher Moltisanti. He's trying to muscle into these no-show jobs, or this sort of general building contractor to get a cut of XYZ, because I want to have influence with that to get me more money, and I can also feed in that apartment complex that is going to be built in the next 16 months, right? So how am I going to do that? What other people in the city are also trying to look at that job in this area, and the things that naturally happen? You're flexing different muscles, right?
Right.
With regards to the cause and effect.
Right. With regards to the cause and effect, exactly. It's like, what else did we overlook? Whereas like in a game of D&D or something similar, you might be dealing with, literal traps, or other, like there might be supernatural influence, that you're dealing with magic in this. Like, yes, you have magic and supernatural influence, but it's like, who are the people that I didn't think of, and what are their motivations, and how is this going to complicate my plan? It's really,
how is this going to come back to bite me, or how is this going to come back?
For the cause and effect and the sense of kind of verisimilitude or realism with the game, it's the difference is like, in one case you're either playing Conan or you're playing The Sopranos. They're just very different, but the game, if you play it by the rules, like it's very deadly. Like, you can't. There's consequences to the actions, and people die in it. So it's not like steering things towards drama. I don't think we really need to steer things towards drama.
It'll naturally happen.
Yeah, you would have to like steer yourself out of the drama,
right,
to get it to not happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to naturally happen. It can't not happen unless you, for some reason, make a concerted effort to not have the masquerade matter, which I've seen, and it's wrong.
It's really stupid.
It's really stupid.
Yeah.
Then
it's like dark superheroes in a Judeo-Christian nightmare world. That's right.
Like, you should play, I don't know, something else. I was going to say you should play Cyberpunk, but even Cyberpunk should have many complications. But at least that's a world where overt violence happens more on a day-to-day. It's like everybody knows they're living in an urban dystopia.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, that's exactly, like you said, Matt. What two very different things are going to happen as a direct consequence of Conan cutting through a crowd of people with an axe versus your Bruja cutting through a bunch of people in a nightclub with protein claws.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So another thing, kind of to latch onto the point that you made earlier about the Sabbat and the comparison of the Sabbat and the Camarilla. So with the Camarilla, you've got people who are espousing the ideas of humanity. The passive enlightenment are more than just an idea. They are the way you live. They are the way you think. So you have vampires who, as Camarilla, are trying to become or trying to appear more human, trying to think, and essentially walk in a human way, act in a human way, carry themselves in a human way. Whereas you have the Sabbat who are more instinctual, where they follow instincts. So they are what they are. You know, when you're dealing with the Sabbat, they don't have to pretend to be anything other than what they are. So they're in their natural environment all the time. Whereas you run a Camarilla person into a Sabbat pack, he has the abilities to break bad if he needs to, but now his mind isn't there. That's not the world that he lives in.
Yeah.
He lives in a human world. He acts and carries himself in a human world, hence humanity.
He's trying to pretend and cover up his real nature, whereas the Sabbat are just embracing their real nature, or what they perceive to be their real nature.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never heard it put over that way, but I really do like that, the idea of the Sabbat are not trying to cover up with an extra sort of mental or emotional step. They're not trying to be in opposition to what they are.
Right.
And so they're more embodied, I guess you would say, on a general day-to-day or night-to-night basis. Which I really like. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. There's a lot of the thing is, some of the Sabbat resources that came out later on, I think handled them a little more intelligently, but my perception of them from the core book, you know, they described the Sabbat as being like utterly monstrous, and like I said, some of it didn't seem to make sense, like just on the level of like, in order to survive, to live to the final night, through the final nights and whatnot, you would have to sort of maintain the Masquerade. The Sabbat, as they're presented, where they're doing like the shovel heads, you know, they have this thing where to get shock troops to fight against the Camarilla, they will mass embrace a bunch of humans. So they'll basically like kill a bunch of humans with a shovel, dig a big mass grave, dump them all in, bury them, and then their kind of initiation rite is them, when they wake up and rise as vampires, is digging their way out in this like frenzied bloodlust, and then be like going off and on like a giant murder spree as their kind of gang initiation. And that's cool as fuck, but it's also like really it's hard to maintain that. It's like, where are the police? You know?
Yeah, right. It always seemed to
end
me
up on the news somehow.
Yeah, this is something I think you see in earlier books or earlier editions of Vampire, and Frank, you can certainly speak to this more than I can. But it seemed to me like you know, the presentation evolved, right? And in some cases, certain clans or certain factions, the Sabbat among them, at various points weren't exactly sure what they wanted them to be. And so you have one aspect of the Sabbat where it's maybe in some ways more philosophical. You have more paths of enlightenment, more discussion of this. It's more spiritual. You have your coterie, your party group as orbiting around a pack priest, this more spiritual, like the trappings of religiosity. We're all part of a holy crusade in the name of the Dark Father Cain. And then you also have like the Lost Boys, or what's the George Romero, what's the movie in Mexico with Quentin Tarantino
Dusk Till Dawn.
Dusk Till Dawn. The Dusk Till Dawn, batshit crazy shovel heads, just a murder spree. You know, we're just playing super villains, basically.
Yeah, 30 Days of Night would be another
30 Days of Night.
Sabbat.
Now, 30 Days of Night actually had an interesting premise. They thought, like, why are we doing this, and why are we doing it here? It's out in the middle of nowhere, and it's night for 30 days.
30 fucking days, yeah.
Great. That's a great movie, a great comic book for, like, a Sabbat pack.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
But again, they don't do that in Times Square.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's catch up on the chat here for a second.
Yes.
Wandering Mage says, I like the Salubri bloodline. They need willing people to feed on, or else they suffer penalties. I haven't played yet VTM, but the Salubri with their other issues as well seem interesting to roleplay. Yeah, this is, I mean, all the clans have their own individual kind of banes and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And it makes them interesting to play because you don't, like, and this one, the Salubri, that's actually like probably the most debilitating
Yeah.
clan weakness that there is. You know, like that and the Zamisi who have you know, have to be covered in the earth of their birth country,
Right.
to, you know, to actually sleep and get the benefits of that.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, this is the thing, is like all the character types are very interesting, and you know, you're not just playing some superhero. You do have great and interesting powers that you can wield, but there's massive drawbacks with it, with everything.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, the Salubri are very interesting. I'm always partial to the Cappadocians.
I always love the Nosferatu. They've been my favorite clan across all editions. Onion Kid, I've heard VTM wonderfully described like this: in D&D, you seek power to solve your problems. In Vampire, gaining power causes your problems. I would argue that if you're playing D&D properly, then getting more shit should cause you more problems too.
Yeah.
I know that's not how it works, and you get gold for XP for gold and all that shit. But
yeah,
maybe that's
this and many other
D&D is
wrong
a
takes.
bad
By,
game. Yeah.
Not every game group has a bag of holding. Huh?
Yeah.
No, I can see how you could cover up that 15 dead and tragic bus accident as Buskell goes offside of the bridge. Not all the bodies found yet. Yeah, it's not the missing shovel heads. It's what they do after they wake up.
Right, and they don't kill people in a bus, but they
they go on a murderous rampage.
Also, you can make that happen, but it's very hard when that's happening multiple times every night.
Yeah.
In Mexico City, there's no one left.
Yeah.
Or New York City.
Got Mr. Max here.
Mr. Max.
It matters most when it's in a Camarilla City. You know, if it's in some place off the grid, it doesn't matter as much. But when it's in the city streets where the Masquerade has to be maintained, well, now you got 15 issues running around, ripping heads off, biting out throats, and doing all kinds of the crazy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as vulnerable as vampires can be, they're also still amazingly tough. So 15 vampires deliberately causing problems in your city is such a huge problem.
Right.
That's like almost apocalyptic type event.
Right, and you could see something like that happening as like a strategic move by the Sabbat.
Right.
The Sabbat and the Camarilla, for those who haven't picked it up or are new to Vampire, they are factions. They're institutions, I guess you might say. That's too strong of a word, but they're factions of vampires who are at odds with each other. But you could see essentially a shovelhead tactic or something to that effect being used sparingly and having it make sense, where you're going into, you have one guy, you have a pack going into
tactical chaos,
Camarilla City. Tactical chaos. And we're going to shovelhead a bunch of people in a Camarilla domain and then get the hell out of Dodge and let the Camarilla deal with the cleanup.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
More mortalize.
Whittle them down. Yeah.
Whittle them down. Now,
there's a huge difference between, someone who has the capacity to fight, throw hands, what have you, versus somebody who's trained to kill.
Mm-hmm.
I find that more times than not, the Sabbat are the ones who are, actively training to kill and take out their enemies. Whereas you have the Camarilla, 1 in 10 guys is that guy, is that person. So keeping that scale, keeping it real, so to say, where you have, one guy in the room who's capable of dealing with the Sabbat, but the rest, they're typically on humanity. They're not thinking about warfare. They want to get away from the shit. Mm-hmm. They don't want They don't want to deal with it. They use their powers, whereas you have the elders, higher generation or lower generation rather, vampires who just browbeat you with their powers, their presence. That's what keeps some of these killers at bay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a real threat to have the Sabbat knocking.
And that's another great point. It's like, especially if you're a neonate, but even if you're an ancilla, yes, you are a person who now has a beast within them. When eventually that beast is going to break free, but when that is not the case, you are more or less. It's not like your entire mind and identity change. The fears, the hopes, the mores, especially the younger that you are still very much intact. And if you are, a white collar wage slave who got embraced,
Right.
I don't care if the biggest, baddest bruja or gangrel embrace you, and now you have all these dots in potence or protean or fortitude or whatever. On paper you're a brutal powerhouse, but you're also just a guy. You were a guy who worked at the bank 3 years ago, and you haven't come up with that fighting spirit in yourself. You don't have that killer instinct. You're still afraid of conflict, even if you know the bullets won't significantly hurt you, even if you know that you can probably take this person out. Again, it's like that scene in Fight Club. I want you to go out and I want you to get into a fight. Most people are desperate to avoid a fight.
Yeah.
Even if you're jacked like Brock Lesnar, because
that's a good point. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. You're not used to it. You're not used to it. You don't know what to do. Your mind is not set to handle that situation.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the problem with vampirism, is that you're kind of stuck. Like, you have your character changes, but the point of the curse is that you're in stasis permanently.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that stuff takes it takes a lot of willpower to overcome that. And most characters won't get there. And like you were saying, the Sabbat generally, they are the ones that, they're taking people that have killer instinct and rolling with that. And they do that out of kind of necessity in the setting, because they are the ones that, at least according to their beliefs, which, of course, turned out to be true.
The good guys all along.
Yeah, is that they know that, like, the end is coming, like the end of everything. And the Camarilla has its head in the sand. And it's like, you can't wake those people up, or at least that's the way they view this. And so, like, they have to be as violent as possible. They have to train, and like that's their whole thing, because they want to survive. They know these are the final nights. They know the antediluvians are about to wake up and come back and reclaim their blood from everyone, and everyone's asleep.
And even night by night, you and your pack priests, you're doing. It's a religious, in many respects, a religious organization. These people believe it.
Yeah, I mean,
you're doing, through supernatural means of the blood bond and the Valdery, you're indulging in this. You're taking in this mindset, this worldview, night after night after night after night after night. And
and that the Valduri, it's also what, like, keeps the packs so loyal, and it makes it makes for a very easy way of running a chronicle in Vampire with the Sabbat, because you can still have conflict between the characters, but ultimately they are supernaturally bound together in purpose with one another and to protect each other. So there's kind
Everyone's
of a built-in harmony there. This bloody harmony.
Oh, very true. Yeah. Cohesion is powerful.
Yeah. 28 millimeter, how's it going, man? He says he's going to run Hunter first, then VTM.
Nice.
Yeah, one of the ways that I like to run Vampire is to actually start with the players being humans, being mortals, and then everyone slowly gets embraced and brought into the vampire world.
Yep.
Right.
And that ends up making a very satisfying game, because I think there is a little bit of a disconnect when you do start as a vampire. It's like you're not looking at them you're looking at them less as a person. But if you start out as just as a human, as a real person, and get brought into that world, I think there is a difference in the way the game plays out.
Yeah,
there is significant.
It allows you,
and it's better that way, in my opinion.
It is better if you have the time and the players to spend the time putting that over. You're getting so much more depth out of the character, because indeed you can have a backstory, you can have a concept in mind, but you're not experiencing that character as they were, which like you said, a huge portion, the majority of that character's worldview, outlook, tendencies, habits are what is going to be frozen in time forever at the moment of that embrace.
More importantly, when you have your player base is starting off as hunters or mortals going into that world, the scariest thing is that vampire that runs the block in that neighborhood, down the way.
Yeah.
And what you don't know is he's only 11 gen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Only 11 gen.
Yep.
Holy shit.
Hey,
we got a super chat for $20, and he didn't even say anything. He just gave us money.
Wow.
Right on.
He gave us high praise because we one of the good shepherds we are taught him the correct way, the aphorism, no gaming is better than bad gaming.
Right. Well, he taught himself the lesson, though, which was getting into a bad game.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Maybe this was the one.
Yeah.
Have they made sure to talk about safety tools and their importance yet? No. Frank, are you familiar with RPG safety tools?
RPG safety tools. I'm gonna have to get schooled on this. What's going on?
Okay.
Nothing good.
So what's unfortunate is now the people that make Vampire and make all the White Wolf games, Onyx Path and White Wolf, are taken over. They've been taken over by these like weirdo dorks. And
other
like
words
gender
say,
freaks.
But we are monetized now, and so must be.
So we have to protect the bag.
Yeah.
But they basically, it's like they have these safety tools. The first thing is called lines and veils, and these are things that you discuss before the game starts. So you say, "I'm uncomfortable with X, Y, or Z topic. Like I'm uncomfortable with murder. So we can't have murder in the game. That's a line for me."
Physical assault, the thing you do every night, to stay alive.
And they've implemented this thing called the X card, which is you get a card that has a big X on it. You put it on the table, and if someone's feeling uncomfortable at any time, they just tap the X card, and you have to immediately end the scene and continue on, so that you're not traumatizing them. Like. These people must be stopped.
These people must be stopped, and that is what the mission from God is. Safety tools are a great resource to run a shit game.
Exactly. If you want to have the worst experience
possible, load up on these.
Load up on the safety tools.
I don't even know where to go with that. You would think some of that, would just be common sense to begin with. So
well,
Mr. Max earlier said I was a werewolf guy, but that's because I'm an eco-fascist. That checks out. That's the whole thing.
Yep. Even more so in Werewolf 5th edition, which we will talk about.
That's the new premise, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me see here. Safety tools. We got that. Butt quack, voice of a generation. Sorry, I meant to post that with the super chat. I'm a little intoxicated right now. Good for you, man. Yeah. Right. Well, we definitely appreciate the $19 with no message as well.
Yes.
I'm about to ruin this man's life just by mentioning safety tools. They also, here's another one, is they'll all at any time you guys can do a check with other players. Just check in with them. and you don't have to say anything to interrupt the flow of the game, but you just say, "Are you okay?" You know, you do the little okay sign, and they can give you a thumbs up, I don't know, or a thumbs down. And at that point, you got the same thing as the X card. You have to end the scene as quickly as possible, and the player also doesn't need to explain themselves
or have any
because that could also be traumatizing to them.
Of course,
you know, explaining why they are not okay with it. And I had a guy in a Discord who was telling me that he was playing Vampire and they were using these tools, and one of their lines was murder. And it's like,
like
the game is about murder. Yeah.
Yeah. So stupid.
Yeah, these people.
Yeah. What are you playing there?
Yeah. I honor that. I honor your feelings so much that I'm going to eradicate your character because your character was murdered to become a vampire. So please leave immediately.
Right. Yeah. This is Vampire the Masquerade. Safety tools are brought to you by Durex. I don't advocate real world violence, so I won't. Oh yeah, that was Butt Quack. That's right. So it's this guy. The
guy. I will neither confirm nor deny whether.
If I was in the game and somebody gave me the okay sign, I would immediately yell out white power. I think our chat needs some safety tools.
And I've been in games where I've had players who were I wouldn't say that there was so far as dressed up in the robes and the white pointy hats, but I mean, showing up with the laces, the red laces, and the suspenders.
Oh man!
I'm like, hey, this is you don't come to this game to be soft shoot. You don't come out here to be to play nice with. It's not a nice game. It's not supposed to be a game. It's supposed to be an enjoyable, dark experience. Now, if you can do all of that and still maintain, some respect and for other people, without being, overly sensitive or
a bitch,
a bitch about it. Yeah, there we go. You're gonna have a good time. It didn't bother me one bit. I see this every day. So, to see it in the game, in a very real game, a game that's meant to portray reality.
Yeah,
at its place,
in a darker version of reality.
Yeah, it's even
one
worse.
That's worse and more violent, and all of that stuff. Yeah. That's the reason we fucking play the game. It's like, if you're playing this game, it's because you're attracted to horror. Like, horror is my favorite genre. And the World of Darkness was great because it takes all of the you can draw from your imagination and all these like crime movies from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Like it's like imagining living in 1980s New York, but it's worse,
Yeah.
Right.
Like there was in 1989, there was like 2,000 murders in New York City, which is insane. But it's like, no, it's worse than that. Like it's a very scary place. And so any attempts to sugarcoat that is literally,
you're killing it.
You're killing it. It's the opposite intent of the game.
The immersion is where it's at. You got a player who's playing a pacifist. Then I want to see pacifism. I want to see peace. At every opportunity. Even when you're about to get your ass kicked, you're going to get your ass kicked. I want to see you come up with some peaceful shit to get out of that situation. I don't want to see you suddenly develop the ability to fucking do kung fu, or you decide you had enough and you're going to fight this guy now. Suddenly that's your moment. No, it doesn't. Don't do that. Don't kill the immersion. Stay, stay with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Stay in character. Stay with the world.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable to me that these people are now the ones who are basically the stewards of Vampire, and like these dark, gritty games that were really boundary pushing, and now it's like they're just putting every boundary in that they can
back in.
It's so I'm just like, you are so lame.
That's not my vampire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. RPG NIMBYism.
Blood scares me even talking about it. I'm gonna need to bust out that X card a lot. I'm joking, but could you imagine, given the themes of BTM, it'd be hard to go 5 minutes with certain people. Yeah, which is also why we're very much about gatekeeping your table and not letting these pieces of shit sit down and play the game with you.
Yes.
Because they'll just ruin it.
They'll just ruin it. Yeah.
Yeah. Shit, if anything, tell them at the door, hey, this is going to be a rough game. If you can't handle that walking in, then,
talk to you later.
Talk to you later. No disrespect, no love lost.
Yeah.
Or maybe I won't talk to you later.
Ever again.
Or ever again.
Yeah. I will disrespect you later. Yeah. Something we were talking about putting over the various aspects of the character, their what they can do, what can't they do, and how that ties into influence and the general goings on of the city. Something that you did in your game, Frank. I'm not sure if this is a mechanic that I've missed over the years, or maybe it's an artifact of the LARP world, or it's something of your own devising. And you'll know the name. The name is escaping me, but the tags. You give characters tags and NPCs tags. I've never thought about to do that before, but I really like how you incorporate that into your GMing style. So where does that come from? Is that something that you've done, and how do you decide what, where, and who to give those things to?
I would love to say it was my idea, and though we've had similar instances of it in the past. Every game group has a guy or somebody at the table that's he's I don't want to call him the fool, but maybe he's the table fool, So like that in the city, if LARP had these specific tags for the social tags, they could be descriptives, or they could be names. Bully boy, for example. The character's got a reputation for getting business done the bully's way. He's heavy-handed. He puts the pressure on you. So when you're in a social engagement with this guy, and you know that walking in the door, but you've never seen him, you've just heard about him, that puts you in a position to where maybe you want to rethink how you handle this guy, because you might get broken up or laughing stock. They take nothing that the character says seriously. So he's got social hindrances now, because even though he's telling the truth, hey, bro, you've had a reputation for, making a fool out of yourself, or, fumbling the ball at the most important moment. So no, we're not going to give you a chance. You got a great plan, but you're not going to be the one to make it happen. We're going to give it to somebody else. So you position the players to have to work beyond just their dice pools. You've got this hanging over your head, and you got to find another way now.
Yeah.
And those that could be a long list of descriptives. You can do it for role play rewards. The player that goes out and decides, hey, the Sabat have been knocking at this door too long. And I've watched, and I sat by and watched it. Several havens have been burned down in the past, few months, and the prince has been slow to react. I'm going to do something about it. Yeah. And if he's got the means, and she's got the balls to pull it off and go get it done, and they stop something important from happening against the Camarilla, give them some credit. You can't give the character gold. You're not going to give them money, so give them reputation. And as long as everyone keeps it real at the table, then, they're going to honor that reputation, because it is supposed to mean something. Yeah,
that's something I really like about the vampire system as well, is gaining things like status. And these are all, it's a path of character advancement that is achieved completely through role play. It's, not related to your experience points. It's related to what you're actually accomplishing in the game. And there's a whole bunch of those. That's something that I always miss in other systems when they don't have something like that, where your reputation matters, and because you should be gaining benefits from increasing your reputation, and increasing your reputation actually requires you to do something interesting in the world.
Yes.
Yep.
every
It's
time.
not just 30 XP for killing a knoll.
All right.
You know?
Right, exactly. You know, I happen to have survived for 30 sessions, but I've done nothing interesting.
Yeah,
they don't know my name, good, bad, or indifferent. The harpies don't
Right.
talk about me. People say, "Who are you again?" At Elysium,
yeah,
you know, no, you're losing. You're failing at the game. Influence, status, that is the currency of a vampire game. Influence and social standing. Definitely.
Yeah.
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 It's
And
one of the, yeah.
okay.
I was gonna say that's definitely one of the big ones, and but it also depends on where you go with the supernatural element, because you can,
Yeah.
if you dive deeper into that, the city politics, because I think there's also the perception by a lot of people that this is just like city politics, Machiavellian, like we're sitting around in the parlor, you know, talking shit about each other, and that's how, you know, when there's so much more that you can do in the game too.
Oh yeah.
And, so many different paths, and also another way of doing character advancement is, of course, through diablerie. When you
Yep.
drain the blood of another vampire and continue draining them until you eat their soul and incorporate a bit of them into you.
Would you really?
Yeah.
Would you really? If you think so, put a gun in your hand and go next door. And just, you know, the idea is you're putting someone's life, you're taking someone's life, you're snuffing them out.
Yeah.
There's
and you're it's like
no more existence.
And but you're doing, it's like you're doing something worse though, because it's like you're snuffing them out of existence. It's like you're eating their, you know, the last thing about them, their spirit, you know. And
which really is what you're doing,
right?
You know, as certain
literally what you're doing in the game, and doing that for possibly getting some additional benefits.
Yeah,
it's like
sometimes considerable drawbacks, because it doesn't always take.
Right, exactly. It's because it's like cannibalism but worse. And like maybe they're gonna, like, maybe now they live in your head and they
or maybe they control, you know. Such things have been rumored to have happened,
right?
You know, just because you get the drop, you think you got the drop on that elder, you know what I mean? Or you've been playing, a a multi-year game, even a Methuselah, was it really that easy? Did you think it would be that easy?
I think it would be that easy, right?
Yeah, know, all the plans and the schemes of the Methuselahs has no end, and their schemes don't always end with their apparent deaths. Maybe they're just wearing you as a meat suit now.
Right.
Yeah. But with you even realizing who they are, or who they were all along, you know.
Which again, that's another. To your point, Matt, it's not. Yeah, the Machiavellian politics is like a big part of like your. It's a big part of the aspect.
Yeah, it's a big part of the bread and butter of the game.
It's by far not the only thing, and also there are reasons for the politics when you're interacting, even just among other vampires, with people who have been plotting and scheming and laying contingencies upon contingencies upon contingencies for decades, centuries, millennia. Yeah, you better talk it through like a lot before you make any move on that chessboard, because you have a very low chance of getting one over on some of these elders.
But that's also the great thing about the elders, and is that like they have to be totally paranoid, because there's just more, and especially the really old ones, watching the human population explode, and become bigger and bigger over the millennia. But with that, the number of vampire population exploding because of that as well. And like being like, everyone's coming for me, and like it makes for really interesting old people, you know.
Yeah. Most
Old people
definitely.
with old mindsets, old values.
Yeah, and maybe very old mindsets
Very
and
old.
values. And that's the whole thing too, is like that. And something that I think is a mistake that people make in running this game too is when they have like they'll have these elder characters and they're like this vampire is 1,200 years old, and they're like flying around in helicopters in like or in the corporate jet or whatever, wearing suits. They have a phone. I'm like, none of this makes sense. Like this is like this person is from a completely different age. Like this is like obviously they've watched everything change, but if you sat there and watched generations die and then you lived through the Industrial Revolution and you're in this world, it's like basically totally alien to your experiences.
They predate the Middle Ages, let alone, you know what I mean?
The old world was old for a very long time.
Very, very, very long time.
So they should have a lot of. They have the anachronistic flaw, but if you're really keeping to it and playing a lot of this newer technology, this new way of these X cards and shit for the games, you don't want to deal with that shit. You want to do it the right way. You want to do it the real way, the old fashioned way, so to say.
Yeah. We follow Hammurabi's law here.
Yeah.
The real one.
Not my king.
All that shit is cool, but
like if you want to have, like you said, a vampire a vampire elder, or a Methuselah, someone who's over 1,000 years old. That's a truly exceptional among the exceptional to like be with it and like cogent enough. You have certain lore characters in the world, and I generally don't use lore characters, but some of them are written well enough that it's like, okay, this is a good at least blueprint for something. Helena, the actual Helen of Troy, is a lore character she's a vampire, and she's like with it. But she is truly exceptional.
Yeah. So chat, we will catch up on you in just a second, but we did get a question for Frank. Frank, do you write or publish RPG material?
You should, man.
I've been putting some things together.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting it published here soon.
Yeah.
So yes, nice. I do. For some for Vampire. I'm a real big fan of the post-apocalyptic setting. So a lot of my writing has to do with that. I have some modern day stuff as well, but and it's not all game oriented either. But I do enjoy writing. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, you do a lot of it. I see you writing a lot for your prep, just for running, or even as a player character. You got a good mind, a good head for it. So I will certainly be purchasing anything that you bring to the market.
Right on. We'll do it.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
I've told you to do that too, man.
Okay, yeah.
I need to do something, huh?
You should get a YouTube
The people
channel.
want more Frank.
Yeah.
Anancio, man. Anancio is a character I could really write on.
Yeah, Anancio is a great NPC.
Mr. Black, man. He can't stand him, so Mr. Black.
So here's another question. Have you ever I'm sure over the years you've had, and this doesn't have to be necessarily from Vampire, but I'm sure you've had your characters die at some point. Do you have like a really memorable time that one of your characters died? Or even when you were running a game, was there a character death that really sticks out?
Man, there's too many of those. Wow. I'll give you one. It was more of a humorous death than it was anything else.
They always are.
And this is this happens to be in one of the zombie apocalypse games that we were playing, and the GM was really big on immersion. Fuck the dice, leave the dice alone. tell me how the story's going, show me what you're doing, let me feel what you're doing, let me see what you're doing, and let's hang in that and let that be what we do here at the table. And he can just sit back and cross his arms and just watch you and listen to you the whole time. He wouldn't touch the dice. So in this scene, the character was a scout. One of the players was a scout, and his job was to essentially go ahead and check out the next city or town that was deserted or whatnot, to see just how many of the infected of the zombies are out there, and then come back and let the crew know it's safe to go ahead and proceed. So with that said, the guy goes into the city. He's on a motorcycle. And if you imagine in that the zombie apocalypse is setting, the power's out. It's an apocalypse. There's no sounds of cars passing by on the roads and the freeways. Yeah. There's no air conditioning units turning on. The interims throughout the night and the day. There's just still. If nothing's moving, nothing's making any noise, any sound. So he's on this loud ass bike coming down the freeway into this town. And for the most part, it looks deserted. And he asked the storyteller, is there any zombies around? Is there anybody else around? And the friend the guy's name was Big Joe. We called him Big Joe. I was telling the story, and he said there was a few. There were a few zombies that dot the streets. One or two under a car here, a dead one actually sitting in the car, a few more on the sidewalk. No big horde or anything like that. Nothing really to worry about. So the guy proceeds, and to make a long story short, he gets into the point where he's actually in the center of this, in the center of this town, before he starts realizing these more and more zombies are coming out now. So he looks at Jimmy and he's like, "Well, I thought you said there weren't any zombies out here." Well, there wasn't at first, but with you making all this damn noise coming through the city, they're starting to come out and surround you, or close in on you. He doesn't succeed in fighting his way out, man. He ends up having a very brutal death as he tries to turn back, and he can't fight his way through it, and he ditches the bike, tries to jump over the fucking crowd of zombies, and it doesn't work, and he ends up fucking crowd surfing until they take his ass down, and it's
rip him apart. That's the thing, is like when people die in role-playing games, it's almost always their fucking fault.
Yeah.
Because they did something like that. Like I've done things like that before, where it's like you just make some choice that might seem interesting or like correct in the moment, and then in retrospect you're like, what the fuck was I
doing? Yeah.
Many of those.
Oh yeah.
All right, so back up here. Buttquack says, I was on a voice call playing vampire, and a Jewish guy who's a fantastic player got called a Nazi by a blue hair.
Yep.
A blue hair. That's got to be a character class now.
Yeah.
Is that an archetype now?
That's a monster. A CR.
It's a monster.
1/4 monster.
I kind of want to know more about why the blue hair called him that. Does the context make the scenario funnier?
Undoubtedly, it does.
He wasn't using the X.
Yeah. And X
Lies. The currency of the vampire game is the aforementioned big titty goth chicks. Anything else is just icing, preferably on the chick. True.
Very true.
That was intended to come off thirsty for the joke. Well, you succeeded.
Yep.
Buttquack says the Jewish guy was playing a very conservative finance bro from the 80s who didn't really like gays or women. Okay. So they called him a Nazi. Yeah, okay.
Golly.
Math checks out.
Yep.
Oh man. God. Yeah,
awful.
So I guess I would because we're getting kind of towards the end of when we usually cut things off, but I would like to pitch to you though to check out Vampire the Requiem and give it a chance, because I think that a lot of people.
Second edition.
Yeah, second edition, not the first edition. First edition's kind of bland and boring, but it's a different take on the game. Like there's still like a lot of the similar themes and whatnot, but a lot of the hate that game got over the years is completely unjustified, and especially with the new edition, it's a new edition. I mean, it came out like 8 years
Yeah,
ago.
it's going to be that way
Yeah,
anytime
yeah.
soon.
The most recent edition.
The most recent edition, yeah, is really, really good. And the kind of biggest difference for me was even like I look at Masquerade and like I love the meta plot. Like I love the lore, like everything, but at the same time, I felt like it was so overbearing by the end because I started playing in Revised right at the end, like right before they released all the Time of Judgment books and the game line came to an end. And I got really autistic and deep into the lore, but at the same time, it felt very overbearing in that it was like this all has to kind of make an appearance in the game, and it doesn't have to, but it felt that way to me. And with Requiem, it was like a clean slate, and the setting, is different. And they made the decision they ditched, the Cain myth, everything, and it's all just mystery going back to the beginning. Because when they ditched generation, so instead of it being based on generation from Cain, removed, you have blood potency that over time becomes more and more powerful. So elders, the more time that you're around, and of course it's like you can advance through diablerie and everything like that as well. But elders, when they start getting into the 7, 8, 9 rating of blood potency, because you start at 1, then they start getting sleepy. Like they start feeling the call to rest and let themselves cool off, basically. And the idea is also, it's like once you reach certain levels of blood potency, it's like you can't feed from animals anymore. Then you can't eventually feed from humans anymore. And I think that's just, if I remember correctly, that's probably the same with generation, but in the opposite direction. At some point, the blood of humans can't sustain you, so you become this kind of predator on other vampires. But that comes with so many problems because you risk, the blood bond, you risk all of this other stuff, and so this when they go into torpor, and their blood thins out and weakens, they're basically in this like kind of animalistic nightmare
dream
that is, by the time they come out, their memories are kind of Swiss cheese. They're not sure if what they remember is real. Everything's kind of scrambled. So looking back in history, everything remains a mystery because nobody knows. And so it got rid of kind of the, for me at least, that kind of overbearing nature of the meta plot. And they simplified temporarily. They temporarily simplified the number of clans. They brought it from 13 or whatever, it was like 25 if you read all the they brought that down to 5 clans, and they kind of just hit the major vampire myth archetypes. You have the Ventru, which are your dark aristocrats. You have the Deva, which are your Anne Rice style sex and blood,
sexy vampire.
Yes. The Maquette, who live in the shadows, and you have the Nosferatu. They made some changes to the Nosferatu curse as well, which was pretty cool. But it simplified those into these kind of archetypes, and created new factions that are completely different than there's one. The Invictus is essentially the Camarilla, but there's other factions in the game very, very different than anything that was in Masquerade. Like one of them is like 10th century Catholic Church through the eyes of Charles Manson. One is like this like new kind of like violent pagan religion called the Circle of the Crone that has like all this crazy blood sorcery. There's one that's like in kind of like they took the anarchs and they but changed them into, instead of being like anarchs against the system, it's like they're more like 19th century communists throwing bombs at the capitalists, and so not necessarily at the capitalists, but just at the power structure. And when they come into power, they are like totalitarians, basically. Like they're not this is not like we need to get rid of the power structure. It's like, no, we need to be the power structure. Like really, really cool. And it just, I don't know, it is a really, really evocative setting.
It's a tighter, more focused.
They changed.
It has a tighter scope.
Okay.
they changed like the way that humanity works a little bit. There's and they also, one of the things that I liked about character creation is that you come up with like touchstones. It's like what's the
Right.
thing that is still keeping you grounded to humanity in some way, and usually it's a person. Over time it might
Yeah.
become a place or a thing, maybe a gravesite, something like that, but it's what is the one relationship that you have that is still reminding you of your humanity and that's keeping you
And
from
humanity as what does it mean to be alive again, not to be a
right.
good person.
It's not about how nice or evil you are. It's just what does it mean to have a beating heart, and like be able to talk to people who aren't bloodthirsty monsters, and it's really really good. And a lot of people have kind of overlooked it, and it's a fresh take on vampire too. So
and they've taken a lot of that stuff over. Or like V5 is actually stole touchstones.
Right.
It's very much a
nice.
similar thing.
I really believe in using the backgrounds and using the flaws and the merits of your players. We had an entire story told about, and it lasted the better part of a year for one character alone. His I believe it was medium. His human mortal character had the ability to speak, and to deal with spirits. So, take that, build on that, make it into something other than just hearing whispers, or, the ghost tells you it's over there, and then you go over there and you find what you've been looking for. What is this ghost story? Maybe this ghost needs something, or this ghost wants something. Maybe this ghost, is really infatuated with the character, or what ended up happening was the character eventually became embraced, but he went through a whole, story of finding out some of these reporters who were involved in the murder of the ghost. They were investigating the murder of the person who became a ghost, and him following that trail to the reporters led to reporters who were finding out about the masquerade. And a handful of them, out of a handful of them, only one or two actually had something on the masquerade. So he was able to set aside the others who were just, some fans about some crazy, scary sounding shit, and go after the ones who were really looking into something. And eventually, through them, found out about vampires, and then found out about the city, and then found out about who was responsible for the original murder. And that, from that one merit alone, we had hours and hours and hours of gameplay.
Yeah, it's something that just it just explodes into this kind of butterfly effect of different seeds and hooks that you can follow. I love that, and it's one of the things that the White Wolf, basically all of their books are structured, or at least were structured this way. Every book had just tons of little sidebars of like story hooks, and things that are just like little bits of inspiration for your game. And it's something that I've found so lacking, like to be fair, that's not the purpose of games like this, but this is like old school essentials. This is like basic expert D&D, and it has no setting information. It's just rules, and a lot of people that follow our channel, they're into these kind of old school D&D games, and the core books for those games, like it's always just rules, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
I'm like, give me the juicy stuff. Give me they're important. They're very important. You need mechanics and rules, but like the stuff that I care about is good.
That's not what is going to hook
me. Yeah, and that's going to hook players in and give me hooks and things that I can take, tweak, build off of. Like that's what makes the game interesting,
Yes. Give me the setting, give me the characters that are likely to exist in this world, and then tell me how to portray them mechanically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how exactly. Then tell me how the rules operate. And usually, because it's like, I want to know what's the genre of the game first.
Exactly.
Then I'll find out what the rules are and if they're compatible with genre.
Right.
I don't want to have to intuit the genre of the game based on the mechanics and the rules.
Right.
That's backwards to me,
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But all that
Agreed.
to say,
Yeah.
definitely give Vampire the Requiem Second Edition a chance.
It's at
'cause
least good
Yeah.
for
Check it out.
inspiration.
An opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I have to pick mine up from Philadelphia.
How many times do I have to say it? You don't play the system, you play the setting, to anyone who's listening. Exactly.
Big agree.
Yeah, big agree. Justin is correct here.
Absolutely.
You do play the setting. And again, it's not to say rules don't matter, but man, oh man, a good setting. Yeah, you need something to resolve conflicts, but it's the stuff that gets the imagination going for me is not this has a +4 bonus. You know,
yeah, and massive red flags if that is what gets someone
that's what gets your imagination
probably
going.
time to ditch them.
Yeah,
they probably have zero creativity and are probably hell to be around. Yeah, but very much, that's, and again, I think that's what hooked a lot of people into Vampire. It had at this chapter forwards were all straight short stories.
Yeah,
drip.
Yeah,
with feel, with tone, with a setting that came alive. The art was excellent, especially in that time. The Tim Bradstreet art, putting over that gothic feel. So always setting first.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're getting close to wrap up. Frank, would you be down to come back again another time?
Sure, why not? I enjoy myself. I appreciate the opportunity to talk some of this stuff out, man. It's nice. Yeah, it's real nice. Man.
Absolutely.
You guys have a very good thing going here. I hope to continue being able to watch and participate by watching. So.
Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us, man. Really, it's
man, really appreciate it.
This is super fun. We love talking about Vampire, and love talking with other people that are not just us about Vampire, because
as much as we do like talking about us, because we are always right.
Yeah.
And also as things get closer, man, if you have stuff to go to market or about to, if you want to hype people up, we'd love to hear about it.
We absolutely love it. We'd love to promote everything, basically. Like, people in our chat sometimes promote their stuff. We love it. We always want good games and good people who are making good games to get more attention wherever they can.
Yeah,
100%.
Let's keep the games good. Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just make sure to include safety tools in your
right.
get the X card out.
Yeah.
All right, and with that, gentlemen, I think we can wrap up here. So
much obliged to everyone who tuned in.
Yeah,
thank you, Primeval Fantasy.
Thank you, Buttquack, for the $20.
$20.
We will not waste it.
Yes.
All right, guys, have a good night.
All right, take care, everybody.